This game is called Who is Your Founding Father? And it took a lot of thought because for a long time I was trying to think of a good game to reinforce the American Revolution, the Revolutionary War, or some of the famous people of the time. So I came up with this Who is Your Founding Father? It's sort of like who is the MVP of the American Revolution, because you always hear about the founding fathers. But what if you had to choose a founding father, or like an MVP of the Revolution? Well, it's kind of like an interview and a race at the same time. So let's see how it works. So click Start. And you see the four founding fathers I chose were George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, or Benjamin Franklin. I thought those were the best founding fathers that you could make an argument to be the founding father. So let's see. I read this first message. It says, how important was it to have founded the University of Virginia, the first college to be centered around a library rather than a church? Well, how important is that? Well, I can go anywhere from 1 to 10. So if I find it to only be 1, I don't find it very important. But if I find it to be 10, I find it to be extremely important. And the founding father who founded the University of Virginia, in this case Thomas Jefferson, will move however many paces I choose. So I think that's pretty important. The first college to be centered around a library rather than a church. So I'm going to give that a 7. Click Submit Answer. And Thomas Jefferson's going to move 7 paces. And as you see, he gets 7 on his scoreboard. So the next question asks, does it matter if the person had slaves? Well, not everybody wants their founding father to be someone who had slaves. So this is actually a negative one. I would say, I'm going to say, I think a lot of people had slaves at the time. I'll give that a 5. I think that's right. So this is a negative. So I click Submit Answer. And the 2 of the founding fathers who had slaves, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, moved backwards 5. So the next question asks, how important is it to lead troops in the siege of Yorktown, the siege in which the British surrendered? I think that's pretty important also. I'm going to give that a 7. I'm going to have 2 of my founding fathers move, because both Hamilton and Washington participated in the siege of Yorktown. So I click Submit Answer. How important is it to be commander of the Continental Army? I think that's very important. That's a very significant role in the Revolution. I'm going to give that a 10. And I know that, of course, George Washington was commander of the Continental Army. So how important is it to have invented the lightning rod and bifocal glasses, among other things? Well, Benjamin Franklin is the major inventor of this bunch. And while I think that's important, I don't know how important that is as far as being a founding father is concerned. I think that goes to being a great person. I'm going to give that a 3. And so Benjamin Franklin's on the board with 3. How important is it to have founded the American Philosophical Society? Well, this was a big deal back in the 1700s. Again, this is Benjamin Franklin. I'll give this a 3 also. So I click Submit Answer. How important is it to have presided over the Constitutional Convention? I think that's pretty important. That was George Washington. Not as important as being the commander of the Continental Army, so I'm going to go with 7. And so there's 25 total questions, and at the end of 25 questions, whichever founding father has marched the farthest, or who has the highest score, becomes your founding father, and then you can print out a certificate. So how important is it to have helped to convince France to join the American effort in the Revolutionary War? I think that's very important. I'm going to give that 10. That's Benjamin Franklin. Let's do one more. How important is it to have written an essay which helped get the Constitution ratified? This refers to Alexander Hamilton's Federalist Papers, and he actually wrote more than just one essay in the Federalist Papers. Well, the Constitution is pretty important, and the Federalist Papers were very important in getting it ratified, so I'm going to give this an 8. And so last one, we'll do one more. This is another negative one. Does it matter if the person was involved in personal scandals? Well, of these 4, both Jefferson and Hamilton were involved in personal scandals. A lot of our politicians over time have been involved in personal scandals. We want our founding fathers to be great people, but we also realize that they are not perfect. So I'm going to leave that at 5. Click Submit Answer. and Jefferson and Hamilton are going to go backwards. Again, there are 25 questions in the interview. So anyway, this is an interesting. I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. I think kids will get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and that's how you play the founding father.